think your live stream is working. I just saw a little pop-up that says you're being live streamed.
Yeah.
So good.
Thanks for stopping by my channel. It is an absolute honor to
Don't
share
need
with
that.
you. And I am
It took me right to my channel. I'm still learning this process. So yeah, looks like we are live. So very good. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We'll have people continue to come in. Those of you who don't know me, Terry, I run the user group here in Des Moines. And this is a kind of a new format that we're going to try for our user groups. It's just a little bit simpler for those of us trying to prepare for it, where we're just simply doing a lunch and learn. We're still going to do the larger quarterly meetings that run for the 2 hour span, and we have guest speakers and everything come in and sponsors, hopefully. But this will be very topic specific and much quicker, easier to hopefully fit in over your lunch hour. So thank you for those who are joining. It's nice to see so many of you connect. Hopefully you're able to see the slide or my screen here as well. And I just have a couple announcements and then we'll get into our presentation. First, our next Lunch and Learn user group meeting will be on flow best practices. I am crossing my fingers and I did get confirmation from Michelle Hansen. She will join us and help with that flow best practices. If you don't know Michelle Hansen, she leads the Cedar Rapids user group. She's also a brand new MVP for this year. And so she is awesome with flows. She has led some of our flow training that we did a couple years ago. So happy and excited to have her participate in that. Our next larger full-on user group, I don't know what we're going to call that, big user group, lunch and learn user groups, I'm not sure. But the next big one will be focused on optimizing your org and things that you can do around that. And then we'll do a deeper dive into the optimizer tool. If you're not familiar with the optimizer tool, that'll be fun to kind of get into some of the details of things that it shows us. And then we'll do a lunch and learn in June on lightning record pages and some tricks on how you can optimize those pages as well. So next quarter, we'll focus a lot on optimizing our Salesforce environment. So that should be kind of fun. This quarter, we're focusing on flow. We'll probably go back to flow again in third quarter just because it's such an important topic for us. But that gives you kind of a roadmap of where we're heading. Our QR code there will take you to our registration page so you can sign up. Some of those events I don't think I have published yet, so I'll get those out soon. If you like the Dream It events, here's a list of the ones that are coming up. Midwest or Northeast Dream It is coming up next. And then the one that we typically are heavily involved in is the Midwest Dream In. That will be in Minneapolis this July. So they are also taking applications for speakers last I checked. So if you've got a fun topic and you'd like to speak, feel free to jump onto their website and complete the application for speakers. Just a reminder of some of the other community events, the MVP office hours, every other Friday at 1. There's a QR or link to get to that one. Automation hours is fantastic. Anything automations, they help people cover that. And then the brand new one that myself and Andy are running is the Flow office hours. We're doing that just twice or once the second Friday of every month, specifically focused on flow. So if you have a flow that you're interested in, needing some help with, feel free to drop in. It's just a Q&A for an hour. Any issue that you're having, specifically around flow. It's very similar to automation hours, with the differences we're 100% dedicated to flow. So that QR code will take you to our Flow office hours website, I believe. The next big event that Salesforce has is the Trailhead DX. That will be live and online. That is scheduled currently still for April 27th and 28th. That QR code there will take you to a save the date page so that you can get notification of when registration is live for that event. And then finally, one more item there is the Salesforce Admin Certification Study Group. I know some of you have participated in my study groups in the past. DMAC liked them enough that they want to sponsor those events. And so I am working pretty closely with DMAC. And for those of you outside of the area, DMAC is our major community college in the Iowa area. And so we are partnering together to do as much Salesforce education to our community as we possibly can. And this one is one way that we do that. So we already did start. We started last week. So if you still are interested, you can sign up till Monday. Monday is going to be our cutoff date. If you don't have your admin certification, or even if you are just wanting to learn Salesforce better, it's a great way to get in and have a focused, steady plan for getting either your certification or just gaining additional knowledge. So that's a great opportunity for those that are interested in that. We would love to have you join. So feel free to sign up for that if you are interested. And that is my last on the announcement. So I will go ahead and let's jump into our primary topic, which is we're looking today specifically at the Flow migration tool. So I've got a few slides, and then we're going to dive in and actually play with it and see what it can and can't do for us. So this will be kind of fun. Feel free to chat with me. You might have to raise your hand or do something to grab my attention, since I am kind of running this one all by myself here today. So it might be just as easy to unmute and yell at me or something if you need to catch my attention. But I'll try to watch that chat window there as well. All right, so things that you need to know about what's happening here on the Salesforce world. The big announcement at Dreamforce was that Process Builder and workflow rules are being discontinued, and that they want us to start getting all of those items moved over to Flow. So Flow is going to be our new automation tool. We can start migrating. They're going to provide us a Flow migration tool. That's what we're looking at here today. For workflow rules, that you should now all have that in your org. I think all of the spring releases have been moved throughout the ecosystem. So I think everybody should have access to this tool for workflow rules. And then we're expecting to have the migration tool for Process Builder in summer. And then they are planning to prevent our ability to create brand new workflow rules and brand new process builders in the winter release. So that is the schedule of what's happening. If you go in today and you attempt to create a new workflow rule, you're going to see this warning on the top of your workflow rules page that says, hey, go with the flow. With Flow Builder, your future low code, it can do everything that you need it to do and more. They're just kind of giving us a warning right now. They're not stopping us from creating new workflow rules, but they are trying to encourage us to begin that translation or transfer over to Flow. If you go ahead and create a new one, if you click that new workflow rule button, they're going to again send us a prompt, and it's going to look like the one in the lower part of our screen. And you can continue to work with workflow rules, or it will transfer you over to Flow Builder. So they're going to do their best, it looks like, to try to get us to make this migration. I don't believe that I saw this on Process Builder yet. So it might just be that this is specific to workflow rules still. Okay, so other things you need to know, this is more what Salesforce is doing to try to help us get there, meaning help us get more comfortable with Flow. They are, and most of this information is coming from the presentation that Jen Lee did for us last in January. So this is, I just want to credit Jennifer Lee for this particular set of information. They are continually developing new features in Flow. They're trying to make it easier for us to use. And if you've been working in Flow for a period of time, you already know they're making it easier. There's a lot of things that they're doing to simplify Flow and make it easier to understand. So better tools, edge cases. I wasn't real familiar with what that meant there, but all kinds of new stuff coming through with Flow. One of the things that came up at Dreamforce that was kind of interesting, one of my favorite Dreamforce sessions is called, oh shoot, I'm going to forget what it's called. Oh man, I can't believe I forgot the name of it. It's a session where the audience gets to talk to all of the, to some of the executives and all of the product owners of Salesforce. And you get to ask them questions like, hey, why is this not fixed? It's an absolute, my favorite session. I wish I could remember the name of it.
Is it true to the core?
True to the core. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, true to the core. If you go to Dreamforce or participated with it online, always go to that session. Best session of the whole time. Lots of fun. It's entertaining, and they always give out good stuff too if you go. So true to the core is awesome. And what's one of the people stood up and asked the question, you know, you're trying to get us to move to Flow, but when I call for support, I can't get any support on Flow. The support staff always say, hey, that's a development activity. And the executives there said, wow, I didn't know that. And so they obviously heard the comments from True to the Core, and Flow is now a part of standard support. So they turned that around pretty quickly. So that's awesome. Lots of content coming with Trailhead and different training material that'll be coming, videos and so forth. There's also a lot of us in the community that are trying to help others learn Flow. So take advantage of material that's out there. I've got a ton of it out there, trying to help people get kind of cross that divide of you know, being comfortable with the old tools, but how can you get to that same level with the new ones? So take advantage of a lot of the different tools out there. There's a lot of really good content that the community has done. Okay, so let's talk about the migration, migrate to Flow tool. And currently it is only going to work for workflow rules. So that's something to be aware of if you're playing around with it and you're thinking, man, I can't wait to get my hands on it. Right now it's workflow rules only. It is still in beta, and I hope that means that they're going to make it better than what it currently is. And you're going to see some of this in a moment. We are expecting Process Builder in summer of 22. I promise I'm about done with slides. Here's what the tool can do for you. It can migrate workflow rules that contain the following items. So it's field-based criteria. It is also rule criteria formulas that are set to true. From my testing of this, I think what they're trying to say with the second one is if you do a formula in workflow rules and all you do is say true, meaning it runs every time. It basically bypasses criteria and it always runs. Otherwise, it is field-based criteria. It will update fields. It will do email alerts. It will send outbound messages, and it can do time-dependent workflow actions. So when you look at those different actions it will do, what's the one that's missing? There's 4 things workflow rules do for us. We could do back with workflow rules. Anybody recognize the one that's not there? Oh man, you guys need to sign up for the admin study group. Yeah, there you go, task, right? Tasks are the one that's missing. So it will not, at this point, convert your task if you've got new tasks that are being created with your workflow rules. All right, so let's get out of slides. That was fun, things that you needed to know, but let's actually try this thing out and see what it does. And this was kind of, it was kind of an eye opener for me as I played around and started to prepare this for you. So we are in a org, and I'm simply going to go to process information. And that brings up all of my process items in a single menu here. And one of the new one that you're going to see in your org is going to be migrate to flow. Now, if you're trying to follow along in your org and do this, please do this in a sandbox. Don't do this in your production org right now. So go to your sandbox, and I will tell you, I don't have a lot of in my orgs. I don't have a lot of these. I had to create some just to be able to do some demos, but I think, well, let's just talk through it. This just is bringing back a list of all of my workflow rules. And I can click on that link to go over and look at the rule. So there's your old workflow rules. For those that have never seen a workflow rule, this is what it looks like. For those that are new and are always in Process Builder. But that is your, this is just a simple list of the workflow rules. You can select the one that you want to convert, and then just simply press the migrate to flow. And it will go through this little process, and it will then create your flow. You've got the ability then to navigate over to that flow. And you can see what it looks like. And there's the flow there that it created. So this, in this case, it created a record trigger flow. Object was line items. This is on record create, and it's a fast field update. And here's our update element that it created. I think it's quite impressive that it actually named these reasonably well. That was the one thing I thought about when they were building this. It's like, how are they going to get the names to be something somewhat meaningful? But they've got the main update as our element's name. There's the field and the value that it's setting it to. So voila, very simple, very quick, and easy to do. So let's take a look at the next one, because that worked out pretty well for us. Well, let's finish the screen here. So you can activate this. So right now, when it created it, it did not activate your new flow, and nor did it deactivate your workflow rule. So if you want to then activate your flow, deactivate your workflow, or yeah, your old work, yeah, that's right, workflow. Just go ahead and then click the switch activations, and that will make your flow active, deactivate your old workflow rule.
Oh, you're going to moderate.
Let me see if I can make it a little quieter here for us. All right. Let's jump over now to line item update. This is again on the line item object. It's active. We're going to try to migrate that one. And I get this nice error message that says, hey, we can't migrate this workflow rule because the criteria contains cross-reference or cross-object reference. Migrate to flow doesn't support this configuration. So what is a cross-object reference for those of you who like to talk and unmute yourself? Cross-object reference is, come on, be brave, somebody. All right, I'll show it to you. You're going to be very quiet today, I can see. All right, so this is our workflow rule, and if I edit this workflow rule, cross-object references is where we are navigating into another related object. So you can see there that invoice statement. It's a little bit easier to see it going if I actually navigate there. So line items, those are the objects that are specific to this object. So we're on the line item object, but I've got the ability to navigate to all of its related objects as well. And so cross object is going to one of those related objects. In this case, it's the invoice statement, and it's looking at that status field. So if you have workflow rules that are doing that, that is not going to work for you. So you might ask, well, how do I get around that? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. So let's take a look at a few other options that we have. Let's go back to migrate to flow. And I thought, well, I could adjust my flow. And so I cloned my line item update, and I made a couple other options here. So this one, let's take a look at this one. And instead of using the cross object in the criteria method, I thought, well, let me try to put it into a formula field. And I'll use the isPickVal. Hopefully you're able to see that okay. And see if it would let me reference it or set up and find that using a formula field. So let's give that one a try. Migrate to flow. I get a different error. It's not the same error now, but it says we can't migrate this workflow rule because it contains an unsupported formula. I thought, oh, well, maybe it doesn't like isPickVal. So I got it. And I thought, I'll try again. Let's go into my second option. And in this time, I changed my formula to simply text, and then my field name equals open. Same logic, just a different way of presenting it. And I thought, well, let's give that one a try. Migrate to flow. Can't migrate workflow rule because it contains an unsupported formula. All right, so that didn't work. And I'm one of those that will beat my head against the wall until I try to find a right answer. And so I thought, all right, let me create a formula field. So I went over to my line items and I created this invoice statement formula field that simply looks up at the invoice, and it brings back that, I think I went into the wrong field. I did. Let me try that again. It is this one. And there's my formula field as a actual field on the object. And I thought, well, surely that would work. So let's see what it does. And if I look, let's edit it so you can see the way it's set up. Invoice statement equals open. Jumping back over to my flow. I went to migrate that. And once again, it says that it's an unsupported formula. Okay, so because I didn't want to give up, I thought, let's try it. I wonder if it would work if I edited this and changed it from being a formula. Maybe if I change it to criteria and I say invoice statement status equals open. Maybe that will work. So let's give that one a try. It's now not a formula. We are using criteria to do it, so that might make sense. Let's see if I can zoom back out and go back to migrate to flow. And let's try this one again. And now we're back again to the cross-reference error. So it didn't like it in a formula field either. So if it's a cross-reference error, I thought, well, I can eliminate that maybe by doing another formula field. This time, instead of it just referring to the cross object, I'll do the entire formula field inside of my flow and have it be a checkbox formula that returns true or false. I thought, well, maybe that might work for me. So if we look at that formula, now it's isPickVal, the status is open. That's going to return a true, or it's going to return a false. And we'll go back over to our flow. That is what this particular line is doing. So we're just looking at that criteria. And you'll notice I still have it in a formula, but the formula is, because it's a checkbox, it's going to return just true or false. And we'll try to see if we can convert that one. Migrate to flow. We can't migrate this workflow rule because it contains an unsupported formula. Okay. So let's try the same thing that we did with the other formula. Let's change our workflow rule. Now from being a formula to a criteria based, and let's go down, let's grab that particular field. And in this case, we're just going to say it equals true. I can find where my true window went. I have no idea where it went. Maybe it's hiding. All right, we're going to type it in. Hopefully that window is not going to cause me a problem later. Save that. And let's try migrating it now. Migrate to flow. And we still get the cross-reference item as our error. I kind of ran out of ideas at this point. And I'm curious if any of you have any other thoughts that we could try to see if we can get this to go. But I will tell you that by this point, as simple as my workflow rule is, I would have been faster just recreating it instead of trying to figure out a workaround to get the migration tool to work. Anybody else have any thoughts on an option that might be fun to try to get this workflow rule to move?
Terry, I don't think I would even have come up with the options that you already tried. That was pretty exhaustive.
Yeah, Terry, you went around and I think you thought of many things that we didn't think of. So good for you.
Oh, Kevin, it's nice to see you. It's been a while. All right, so I think that was my first one that I have a failed attempt at. I could not get that one to go. So I'm going to go ahead and let's try another one. We're going to have to manually move that particular one. Let's see what we get with 14 days later. And this one I get an error. We cannot migrate this workflow rule because it contains no actions. So let's take a look at why that is. Sorry, my computer is being a little bit finicky here today. So let's take a look at this workflow rule. The rule itself looks fine, but notice down here below, there are no actions on this particular workflow rule. So obviously, if there's no actions, there's no reason to even convert it. Probably shouldn't have been active in the first place. So it's not going to do anything but get in your way and cause performance issues. So just deactivate those if you've got no workflow rules associated to it. Okay, application notification. Let's take a look at what this one does. So here we have our workflow criteria. It's looking to see if the number of applications is greater than the previous value of number of applications, and then if the notification is set to true. This is a hiring app, so think of recruiting. Somebody has applied for a job, and that's what this particular app is. If that workflow rule is true, it will send an email alert to the hiring manager. Any guesses as to whether or not you think this one's going to work? It is an email, and they said email alerts work.
It has an action, and it's not cross-object, right?
Yep, it's not cross-object. Yep. Shall we give it a try?
Yeah.
Application notice, notification. Hang tight. Dang, it did not convert either. And the reason for that is the unsupported formula field. So basically what I've determined as I've played around with this tool is if my workflow rule is not criteria based. So in other words, I'm using a formula evaluates to true. It's not going to go. The only exception, according to what they have indicated in their rules, would be if my criteria based. Well, actually, even that's criteria based. There's a lot of times where what I've done with formula fields is I've done something like this, to where I just have true as the criteria, so that the workflow rule in essence runs every time. It bypasses in essence the criteria, but that's going to fail too, because it's got to be field-based criteria or rule criteria formula that evaluates to true.
Hey, Terry.
Wonder if them. Yeah, Kurt. Yeah.
Kurt here. Hey, I wonder if on that one where you have that prior value, if that's causing the problem, because in Flow, you have an actual separate setting for prior values.
Yeah. Yeah, you have the dollar record or dollar prior
value.
Dollar record prior.
Right.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, so that one obviously is failing on us as well. So we're not having tremendous success here with our tool so far. Let's try closed position and see what it does for us. We've got 1 out of 3 that have worked. So closed position, we'll try to do that one. And we get 1 more success. We could switch that activation if we choose to. Let's take a look at what that workflow will look like. And you'll see that this one is very simple, criteria based. It's on the same object, so it's position, and our object here is position. So it's number of applications equals 20. So that one we had some success on. Nice simple rule. And you'll notice for what the actions were is that it did send an email alert, and then it did a field update. Had this had a task on it, it would have failed. Any questions on any of that so far? Are you excited about using the tool so far?
I think
It's
I'm just
kind of
gonna
fun.
recreate them at the moment.
It was so nice of you, Terry, to go through all this just so that we don't have to. For us. Thank you.
It's been interesting. I will tell you, I plugged into a couple of different orgs, and I thought, well, I'll see if I have how much luck I have doing this. And so I went over to another org which had a couple different workflow rules over here as well, and went into migrate and tried to see if I could have some success here. This one has a task on it. This one is a naming convention for, I think it was the case or opportunity. So my naming convention worked. So that was nice. Naming convention on the account. Billing state equals Iowa, which is just a silly one that I created. But I created this one to update the owner ID. So I was trying to set the owner to a specific user. If the billing state equaled, basically it's like territory management type stuff, and could not set a lookup field. So that one did not work very well for me. And then opportunity closed one had a cross off object reference on it. So that one also failed. So in this particular org, 1 out of 4 went through okay. So my hope is that because the tool is still in beta, I don't want to like, throw the baby out yet. I'm hopeful that perhaps as we get future releases or the summer release comes around, that it improves a bit. But right now I'm getting maybe a 25% success rate as I try to move them. So one of the things that when Salesforce first announced this, several of us, several of the group that I kind of hang around with on the Salesforce side, we were talking a lot about the tool and thought, man, I don't know why Salesforce is even putting a tool out there to begin with, because really people should take this opportunity to look through all of their workflow rules and process builders and determine, do we still need these? Is there still value in these particular processes? Now, in most of you probably have a significant larger number of flows and process builders and workflow rules than what you've seen in my little test org. And when I say something like, you ought to reevaluate those, you're probably thinking, yeah, right, Terry, I've got 100 of them or 200 of them. It's like, that would be insane. You don't understand. And part of that's perhaps a little bit true, but it's not that much different from a concept of when we had the opportunity to switch from Classic over to Lightning. You remember at that time, we were heavily encouraged to take the opportunity to clean up stuff in our org. This is going to be kind of that same thing. Salesforce at this point is not telling us that your workflow rules or your process builders will not run. They're just telling us that we can't create new. So it's not, we look back at that time, the timeline for this, and we don't have to have everything converted by winter. It just means you can't create new come winter. So you do have time, at least for now. I don't know if they'll say in spring of 2023 that they're taking it out of the system altogether, and then you're I don't know if they're going to do that yet or not. But my point is, unless this tool gets a little bit better, we're going to run into probably some challenges with it. And if that is the case, I would say your best practice, better practice maybe, would be to try to take some time and evaluate those existing workflow rules that you have, determine if they're needed. Workflow rules are crazy simple. So if you are brand new to Flow, it's an easy way to start learning how to create Flow, because they're really, you saw the one that did convert when we were looking at the closed position. It's super simple. You've got just two elements that are sitting on that page. The one of them there updates the record, sets the status to close. The other one is doing the email alert. Now, one thing to be aware of that which is helpful is that the email alerts, which were a part of the old workflow rules, that's not going away. At least not, they've not announced that that's going away. So what I'm referring to there is, if you have email alerts here that are sending out classic templated emails, that's still available. And so you're able to reference those inside of your flow, which makes life a lot easier. Does that make sense? But again, if you're brand new to Flow, migrating your workflow rules, wherever they are here, workflow rules, is really going to be a super low-hanging fruit for a way to get your feet into Flow and start to learn it. Any questions? We've got at least 15 minutes here left. Gives you kind of a sense as to what the tool can't do. Are you all like super excited that the migration tool works as well as it does?
I'm still a little intimidated by the idea of flow. I haven't really gotten into it yet. So it's kind of nice to see it's not really that overwhelming. And we have a lot of fairly simple workflow rules. So I think I'm just going to have to get over it and jump in and try it.
Yeah. I haven't done any videos on transferring workflow rules over to Flow, but if you've got process builders that are that you're migrating over to Flow, I've got a video series on that on my YouTube channel called From Process Builder to Lightning Flow. Alyssa, that particular series of videos will take what you see in Process Builder, the things that you're comfortable doing over here. I don't know if I have one or not. And it walks you through what say, for example, this account where you're setting the account. What does that look like if you're doing it in Flow?
Okay.
What does this decision element and how this is configured? How do you do that if you were doing it in Flow?
Oh, perfect.
So it's a super easy series to kind of follow if you're brand new to Flow. I didn't do it with Workflow Rule, but if you could do it with Process Builder, you'd easily pick it up with Workflow Rule.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. I'll check that out. Thank you.
Other questions?
That made me think, Terry, do you remember how you guys used to have those Trailhead Tuesdays where people would gather together and either they'd work on trailheads or they'd help each other with different things? I didn't know if that's something, like if that did start up again in the next year, if that's the sort of thing people could, partner with each other and help each other on.
Yeah, that's a great idea. If anybody in our community is interested in doing something like that, I could certainly help you get things set up to where you could lead, work on getting that communicated out. The other options that I mentioned too that would be helpful is just simply, actually it was on the announcements. Go to start putting automation hours. I think they meet every Friday. And theirs is a webinar type model, but if they've always got great people talking about whatever automation. And, if you're trying to learn something, it's a pretty good session, and they record them. So if you can't make the meeting, you can always go watch the recording later. That's a great resource, kind of similar, Karen, to what you were referring to, but the Flow office hours is almost identical to what you're saying. It's just online. So that would be another really good approach if you're trying to learn. And I'm not trying to tout or push my stuff out there, because there's other people doing a ton of really good stuff. But those are some really nice options as well. MVP office hours will help you with Flow, but their focus is a little bit more broad. It's more Salesforce in general.
I have a question and kind of a comment, but that's the main kind of a question.
Yeah.
What do you recommend that we do with all these old workflow rules and process builders after we transfer them? Should we just delete them afterwards, or keep
I'd
them?
be a little nervous about deleting them right away.
Yeah.
I'd probably keep them inactive at least for 3 months or better.
Yeah.
Just and then clean it up later. I wouldn't want to leave them out there for long, but that'd be my thought. Was that Clay?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then the next thing, yesterday I noticed I was in a process builder and I didn't recognize a field, so I went into the where is this field used, and I clicked on it, and it looked like I thought I was pulling up the process builder, but it looked like a flow. I'm not sure if that's like another.
Yeah. So that's kind of a backdoor way of getting to the actual flow build of Process Builder. Process Builder is built on flow. So behind the scenes, it is a flow. And so when you clicked on that, what it took you to was the flow that is typically kind of hidden behind the scenes of Process Builder. It's kind of fun to poke around, but it's also the naming conventions of everything is highly confusing. So it's hard to tell what it's really doing. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions that people have, those are good.
Terry, I have a question about kind of the whole, they used to say, one process builder per object. And it sounds like just recently they said that doesn't apply to flow now that we have, the order of execution. So how do you recommend we build these workflow rules out? So for example, I'm looking at one of my objects and we have 34 workflow rules on it. We have cut that down. It was almost to 100 and we've created. But how do you recommend just 34 workflow rules or 34 flows, or is it kind of like try to group them in ways that make some logical sense? But I don't know.
I would do the latter of that. When flow was first introduced until just this last release, most of us were saying one flow per object. And we would manage that flow with decision. So think of your process builder where you have decision blocks, one right after another, true and false, and you could navigate down to the next one. That's kind of the way that we would build our flow, is doing that same thing. If this is true, then go off and do these things. Otherwise, go down to the next one. If it's true, do those. Salesforce in this last release has given us now the capability of controlling the order in which our flows run. And so if I open up this flow and let's see if I can, if I go into the settings, the properties, and I go to advanced, there is, where is the order? I think that thought this was where it was at.
No, you're in the right place, Terry.
Am I in the right place? Where is it? Where am I not seeing it? Is it?
Oh, you're in a screen flow.
It's active? Oh, I'm in a screen flow. Thank you. Yes, that would make a difference. Let me find a different type of flow. We need an auto. It's probably going to be one of these. Thank you. That was like, All right, so let's try that again. Advanced. There it is, trigger order. That trigger order can be any number between 1 and 2000. I really like the way Jen Lee kind of explained the use case for this. She said that when you're creating your flows, add some spaces between the numbers. I don't remember if she said, like, I think she said like maybe have one of your flows be a 1 and the next one be a 10, the next one a 20. That way, if you need something to run in between one of the other existing flows, you still have a range of numbers in there that you can play with. So you can insert something at 15 or something like that if you're doing them in orders of 10. But to answer the question, it does not need to be a single flow now per object. It can be multiples. I would still personally like them grouped together where it makes sense to do so. I also like the idea of having, of using subflows so that none of the record trigger flows get so messy that it's impossible to read. I'd much rather take and if it needs to process something that's fairly complex, put that in a different flow and then just insert what they call a subflow element. And that'll let you go run a different flow. And you can even pass in your input values and things into that. That'll give you a much cleaner record trigger flow if you leverage that. Does that help with your question?
Yeah, it does. I think that's the part I'm struggling with is if I had to build these all individually, I'm like, okay, I can do that. But when it's putting it all together, that's the part that I think is still kind of not clear.
Yeah.
So like how
Yeah.
how would I group them? Would I group them by when this status
Yeah.
happens, all these things happen? Or would I say, okay, these things are more field updates and every time they hit this criteria, just update this field and kind of
Yeah, the other thing that Salesforce has given us is this Flow Trigger Explorer, and I've not played a lot with this one yet, but it does allow you to select the object that you're looking at, you want to work with. Let's see, let's go to that line item. Let's see what we can see. And you can select when the record is created, updated, or deleted for how you want to look at things. And it will show you the flows that are related to it and any actions that are connected. This at least gives us the ability to see things holistically. Without this tool, that's why I was saying always go with a single flow per record, per object, because I wanted to see everything all in one view. This at least is going to be able to provide that and a little bit more. So I think this will be a really helpful tool too. So if you haven't played with it, I've not spent a lot of time with it. So take some time and play around with that option as well.
What's the difference between that Flow Trigger Explorer and the trigger order number?
This allows you to look at things from an object level. So if I want to see all of the automations that are occurring around an account object, for example, it's going to pull all of those flows together and let me see it in a single view. The order just simply says this is the order in which those workflows or those flows are going to run. So it's going to run flow number 1 first, and then it's going to go to flow number 10, flow number 20, and so forth. So all it is order of execution. Does that make sense?
Sort of. So when you were looking at like the Flow Trigger Explorer, would it show at least in that section in the order you set it up, or?
That is a good question, and I don't know the answer to that because I have not played enough with this to know. Does anybody else, have any of you played with this and know the answer to that?
It says sorted by flow label there, so it makes it sound like
Yeah,
it's just alphabetic.
It looks like it's. Oh yeah, it does, doesn't it? Sort. What does this guy do? So before record trigger flows, say performance. Okay, this is your fast updates there. Actions and related records is the after record trigger flow. So, and if you're not familiar with the order of execution, you definitely want to learn and understand order of execution because there's a series of actions that when you press the save button, there's actions that happen before the record gets saved to the database. And then there's a series of actions that happen after it's saved. And then when you look at all of those things combined, it's considered a transaction. Once that entire transaction is done, then your record is truly completely saved. So fast updates are happening before it's saved. Actions and related records is happening after the save. And then you have your commit that surrounds all of that. Does that kind of make any sense? Maybe it's a little bit of a goofy concept because you think, well, the record's saved. Why isn't it done? Well, it's because there's a bigger series of things that are happening around that save that have to be completely done before we can call the record final, maybe is a way to think of it. You also you do have the ability to run things asynchronously, which is just a crazy developer type word that means they run simultaneously. So there's definitely some language differences that as admins we're not as familiar with, because we look at some of the language of Flow and we think, man, that's like a developer. And yeah, it kind of is. But it's things that they're easy concepts that we can learn. I've been working on a series called Fundamentally Flow that talks to these language differences that us as admins may not be as familiar with as a developer would be. But I've just not had a lot of time to get that one done. The first video went out a couple months ago, and I have yet to get the second one out. So it's coming, but it's just life is a little busy for me to get that one in place. But there are resources, and simple questions like what your guys are asking right now, those are perfect for that Flow office hours too. So take advantage of that if you need to or would want. Other questions? We've got time, I think, for one more.
I was going to ask, if I may, when do we think that this this tool will start to help with Process Builder, or will it not help with Process Builder and we just need to create those or recreate them ourselves?
It's supposed to, they're expecting it to be in the summer release.
Got it. Okay.
They've been very good about saying expected. It's expected to come out, which kind of leaves a lot of wiggle room. So I'm hopeful that it will have it then. I'm also hopeful that it gets better, so people can leverage it a little more with more success than what we're seeing right now.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Please sign up for the next user group where we'll talk about Flow best practices. Michelle Hansen is fantastic. You'll love her. You'll want to be a part of that one. If you haven't registered yet, go ahead and get signed up for that as well. Thank you so much, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye, guys.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Yeah.